The October morning air bit at Emma Harrison's cheeks as she stood on the tarmac of the small Montana airfield, her backpack nearly as big as her 8-year-old frame. The private jet gleamed white in the early sunlight, its sleek body promising adventure. Emma had flown with Captain David Chen dozens of times, but the excitement never faded. Flying felt like magic. One moment you were on the ground, and the next, the whole world spread out beneath you like a living map. "Ready, kiddo," Captain Chen's voice boomed across the tarmac. He was a tall man with silver-threaded hair and smile lines that crinkled around his eyes. 20 years of Air Force service had given him the kind of steady presence that made everyone around him feel safe. He'd been her father's roommate in college, his best man at the wedding, and Emma's honorary uncle for as long as she could remember. "Always ready," Emma called back, breaking into a run toward him. Her sneakers slapped against the concrete as her blonde ponytail bounced behind her. Chen caught her in a brief hug before gesturing toward the Citation jet. "Well, your chariot awaits, Princess Emma. 2 hours to Seattle, and you'll be having cookies with Grandma before lunch." Emma's parents had arranged this trip weeks ago. Both cardiac surgeons. They were presenting at a major medical conference in Chicago and couldn't take Emma along to what her mother called 3 days of boring lectures and hotel food. Grandma Rose in Seattle was the perfect solution, and Emma secretly loved having her grandmother all to herself, with promises of the Space Needle, Pike Place Market, and as much hot chocolate as she could drink. As they approached the jet, Emma noticed Chen moved a bit slower than usual, one hand briefly touching his chest. "You okay, Captain Chen?" she asked, her observant eyes missing nothing. "Just fine, sweetheart," he smiled, though something flickered across his face. "Probably ate too much of your mom's lasagna last night. That woman's cooking is dangerous." He patted his stomach and winked, but Emma noticed him pop a couple of antacids from his pocket. The jet's interior smelled like leather, and that particular airplane smell Emma could never quite describe, clean and mechanical, tinged with fuel. She'd always loved it. 6 plush seats filled the cabin, but Emma knew where she really wanted to be. "Can I sit up front?" she asked, eyes pleading. Chen pretended to consider, stroking his chin dramatically. I don't know. That's a pretty important seat. Think you can handle the responsibility?" "Yes," Emma bounced on her toes. "Well, I suppose I need a co-pilot, but only if you promise to pay attention. Deal?" "Deal." 20 minutes later, they were airborne. Emma sat in the jump seat just behind the co-pilot's chair, her headset adjusted to fit her small head. The Montana landscape unfolded beneath them, endless forests giving way to rugged mountains, their peaks dusted with early snow. The morning sun painted everything gold and amber. "See that panel right there?" Chen pointed to a series of buttons and switches on the center console. "That's the autopilot system. Once we're at cruising altitude, I'll engage it, and the plane basically flies itself." "Really? The plane can fly with nobody touching anything?" Emma's eyes widened. "Well, somebody has to watch it," Chen chuckled. "But yes, it's pretty amazing. Modern technology. When I started flying, everything was manual." He adjusted their heading slightly. "We're going to level off at 15,000 feet. That's almost 3 miles up." Emma pressed her face closer to the window. "Everything looks so tiny." "That's what I love about flying," Chen said softly. "Up here you get perspective. All the things that seem so big on the ground, they're just part of this bigger, beautiful picture." He tapped a gauge. "Airspeed looks good, weather's perfect. Should be smooth sailing all the way to Seattle." For the next 15 minutes, Chen explained different instruments. The altimeter that showed how high they were flying. The artificial horizon that helped pilots know which way was up even in clouds. The radio that connected them to air traffic controllers on the ground. Emma absorbed it all like a sponge, asking question after question. "What's this green button?" she asked, pointing. "That's the autopilot engage switch. Watch." Chen pressed it and a small light illuminated. "See, Now the computer is maintaining our altitude and heading. I can take my hands off the controls." He demonstrated, and the plane continued flying smoothly. "Whoa," Emma breathed, "that's so cool." "And this," Chen continued, tapping the radio panel, "is how we talk to people on the ground. You press this button to transmit, then speak into your microphone." He demonstrated. "Seattle Center, citation November 7 3 Papa Charlie, level at 15,000. A crackling voice responded immediately. "Citation 3 Papa Charlie, Seattle Center, radar contact. Proceed as filed." "Roger, Seattle Center," Chen replied smoothly. He glanced at Emma. "Want to try?" Her eyes went huge. "Really? I can talk on the radio?" "Sure, why not? Press the button and say, 'Seattle Center, this is Emma, Captain Chen's co-pilot.'" With trembling excitement, Emma pressed the transmit button. "Seattle Center, this is Emma, Captain Chen's co-pilot." After a pause, the controller's amused voice came back. "Well, hello there, Emma. Welcome to Seattle Center's airspace. You've got yourself a pretty nice office today." Emma giggled with delight and Chen grinned broadly. "See, nothing to it." The sky stretched endlessly blue around them. Puffy white clouds drifted far below like cotton balls on a blue blanket. Inside the cockpit, the instruments glowed softly, everything reading normal, everything perfect. Emma settled back in her seat, contentment washing over her. This was her favorite place in the world, up in the sky with Captain Chen, learning about flying, watching the world pass beneath them. Safe, happy, free. She had no way of knowing that in just 10 minutes, everything would change forever. No way of knowing that the lessons Captain Chen was teaching her, the ones that seemed like fun games, would become the difference between life and death. The clock on the instrument panel read 9:47 a.m. It was the last normal moment of Emma Harrison's childhood. At 9:57 a.m., Captain David Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emma was chattering about wanting to be a pilot someday, maybe flying for the airlines or even becoming an astronaut. He smiled and nodded, but his responses came slower, more distracted. Something wasn't right. The discomfort he'd felt earlier, the tightness he'd blamed on last night's lasagna, had intensified. Now it felt like a steel band cinching around his chest, squeezing tighter with each breath. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead despite the comfortable cabin temperature. His left arm tingled strangely, a pin's end needle sensation that crawled from shoulder to fingertips. "Captain Chen," Emma's voice cut through his thoughts, "are you listening?" "Sorry, sweetheart," he managed, his voice strained. "What were you saying?" Emma studied him with the uncanny perception children sometimes possess. "You don't look good. Your face is all shiny." Chen forced a smile, but even that simple gesture required effort. "Just feeling a little under the weather, probably should have skipped that third piece of garlic bread." He reached for his water bottle, his hand trembling slightly. The pressure in his chest intensified, radiating now into his jaw and down his left arm. Deep in his subconscious, his Air Force training whispered warnings he tried to ignore. These symptoms, this pattern, he'd seen it before in fellow pilots. Heart attack. No, impossible. He was only 56. He ran 3 miles every morning. His last physical had been clean. This was just indigestion, stress, maybe a pulled muscle from helping Emma's dad move furniture last weekend. It had to be. But the pain disagreed. "I think," Chen's voice came out thick, labored, "I think I need to contact ATC just as a precaution." His hand moved toward the radio, but the simple motion felt like pushing through concrete. The cabin seemed to tilt, though he knew the autopilot held them steady. His vision blurred at the edges. "Captain Chen," Emma's voice rose with alarm, "what's wrong?" "It's okay, honey. I just need to." The words died as agony exploded in his chest. It felt like a horse had kicked him, driving all air from his lungs. His right hand clutched at his chest while his left arm went completely numb. The radio microphone slipped from his grasp, bouncing against the center console. "Captain Chen," Emma screamed. Chen tried to speak, to reassure her, to reach the radio, to do anything. But his body betrayed him. 60 years of life, 20 in military service, 35,000 hours of flight time, none of it mattered now. His heart, that faithful muscle that had beaten 3 billion times without complaint, had reached its limit. The world tilted violently. Chen's eyes rolled back. His body convulsed once, then slumped forward against the control yoke. The jet pitched downward. "No, wake UP." Emma's hands grabbed his shoulder, shaking frantically. "Captain Chen, please." His body was heavy, unresponsive, a deadweight against the controls. The aircraft's nose dipped steeper. The autopilot, overwhelmed by the physical force pushing the yoke forward, disengaged with a sharp electronic beep. Alarms erupted. A synthetic voice filled the cockpit. "Autopilot disconnect. Autopilot disconnect." The altitude alert screamed its warning. "Altitude, altitude." Emma's world dissolved into chaos. Red lights flashed across the instrument panel. The horizon line on the display tilted at a sickening angle. Through the windscreen, the distant Earth began growing larger, rotating slowly as the plane entered an uncontrolled descent. She pulled at Chen's arm, trying desperately to move him, but he was too heavy. His face had gone gray, lips slightly blue, eyes closed. A thin line of drool escaped the corner of his mouth. Emma's mind couldn't process it. Adults didn't just stop, they couldn't. Captain Chen was strong and smart and always knew what to do. He'd flown combat missions. He'd landed planes in storms. He couldn't just stop. "Please," she sobbed, shaking him harder. "Please wake up. I don't know what to do, please." Then she saw it. Chen's coffee mug, a battered Air Force thermos he brought on every flight, had tumbled from its holder when he collapsed. Dark liquid spread across the instrument panel, seeping into the gaps between buttons and switches. Sparks popped from a circuit board. Smoke began to curl upward, thin wisps at first, then thicker plumes. A small flame licked to life, where the coffee had created a short circuit. Emma stopped breathing. Fire, on an airplane, 15,000 feet in the air, with an unconscious pilot. And her, an 8-year-old girl who still needed her mother to check her math homework. The smoke detector added its shrill voice to the cacophony of alarms. The cockpit was becoming a nightmare symphony of warning sounds, flashing lights, and acrid smoke. Emma's survival instincts warred with her terror. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, to hide, to find an adult who could fix this. But there was nowhere to run. The cabin door behind her led only to empty passenger seats. The plane had no parachutes. Chen had explained that once, saying small jets didn't need them. They were in the middle of the sky, miles from Earth, enclosed in a metal tube that was now filling with smoke and descending out of control. Emma was utterly, completely alone. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Tears streamed down her face, hot and fast. She was going to die. They were going to crash. The ground was getting closer. She could see it through the windscreen, mountains and forests rushing up to meet them. Then, through her terror, a memory surfaced. Captain Chen's patient voice from just 20 minutes ago. "This is how we talk to people on the ground. You press this button to transmit." The radio. Emma's eyes snapped to the panel. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely control them, but she reached for the headset that had slipped off during the chaos. She pulled it over her ears, the adult-sized padding loose against her small head. The transmit button glowed faintly in the smoke. This was it, her only chance, the only thing standing between her and the unforgiving Earth rushing up from below. Emma Harrison, 8 years old, 3rd grade, afraid of the dark and spiders, took a shuddering breath. And pressed the button. Emma's finger trembled on the transmit button. For a moment she couldn't find her voice. The smoke was thicker now, burning her eyes and throat. The alarms continued their relentless screaming. Captain Chen remained slumped against the controls, his weight keeping the plane in its deadly descent. The altimeter unwound rapidly, 14,200 feet, 14,000, 13,800. She pressed harder on the button and forced words through her constricted throat. "Hello, can anyone hear me? Please, somebody help." Her voice came out high and broken, barely recognizable as human through the static and background alarms. She released the button, listening desperately. Nothing, just static. Had she done it wrong? Maybe nobody was listening. Maybe. "Aircraft calling," say again. "You're breaking up. Identify yourself and state your position." The voice was male, calm, professional. Emma's heart leaped. Someone heard her. Someone was there. "Hello, hello," she was shouting now, forgetting to release the button between transmissions. "My name is Emma Harrison. I'm on a plane and Captain Chen, wake up and there's fire." At Seattle Center's air traffic control facility, Marcus Webb froze mid-sip of his coffee. 23 years in ATC, and he'd handled every emergency imaginable: engine failures, hijackings, medical emergencies, even a bird strike that shattered a cockpit windscreen. But never this. Never a child's voice, raw with terror, broadcasting from an aircraft in distress. His training overrode his shock. "Aircraft calling Seattle Center, I read you. You said your name is Emma." He kept his voice measured, authoritative but warm. His hands were already moving, pulling up radar data, searching for the flight. "Yes, Emma Harrison. I'm 8 years old and the pilot died and I don't know what to do." The girl was sobbing now, words tumbling over each other. "There's smoke and fire and the plane is going down and I tried to wake him up but he won't move and—" "Emma, listen to me very carefully." Marcus's voice cut through her panic like a lifeline. "I need you to take a deep breath. Can you do that for me? One deep breath." In the smoke-filled cockpit, Emma gulped air, choking slightly on the acrid fumes. "Good girl," Marcus continued, his eyes scanning the radar screen. There, citation N73PC, primary target showing descent, transponder squawking normal. "Emma, what airplane are you on? Do you know the name or number?" Emma's mind raced. She'd heard Captain Chen say it on the radio. What was it? Numbers and letters. November 7-3. She looked frantically at the panel, trying to find where she'd seen it written. Papa Charlie, November 7-3, Papa Charlie. Marcus's fingers flew across his keyboard. November 7-3, Papa Charlie, Seattle Center has you on radar. Emma, I need you to tell me exactly what's happening. Is the pilot unconscious? He grabbed his chest and then he fell forward and now he won't wake up. Emma's voice cracked. And his coffee spilled and now there's fire in the controls and smoke and the plane is going down. As if to emphasize her words, the altitude alert blared again. Altitude, altitude. Marcus's supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, appeared at his shoulder, alerted by the conversation playing through the facility's speakers. Their eyes met. Janet's face had gone pale. She grabbed a headset, plugging into the frequency, and immediately began making calls, emergency services, FAA, anyone with relevant expertise. Emma, you're doing great, Marcus said, forcing every ounce of calm he possessed into his words. His own daughter was 9. He couldn't think about that now. I need you to look at the controls. Do you see a dial or screen that shows numbers and says alt or altitude? Emma wiped her streaming eyes, peering through the smoke. Yes, it says 13,000. No, 12,900. The numbers are going down fast. The plane was descending at over 1,500 feet per minute. At that rate, they had maybe 8 minutes before impact. Marcus's mouth went dry. Okay, Emma, I need you to be very brave now. Is there a way to move the pilot off the controls? I tried, Emma wailed. He's too heavy, I can't move him. She pulled at Chen's shoulder again, but his dead weight was immovable to her small frame. It's okay, Marcus soothed, his mind racing through possibilities. The autopilot had disconnected, standard when the controls were forced. The plane was in an uncontrolled descent, and the only person who could save it was a terrified 8-year-old. Emma, listen to me. Under the pilot's seat there should be a red bottle or cylinder. Can you see it? Emma bent down, searching frantically. Her hand found something cylindrical and hard. Yes, I found it. That's a fire extinguisher. Pull the pin at the top and point it at the fire, then squeeze the handle. Can you do that? Emma's hand shook as she yanked the pin free. The mechanism was stiff, designed for adult hands, but adrenaline gave her strength. She pointed the nozzle at the flickering flames dancing across the instrument panel and squeezed. White foam exploded outward, covering the controls in a cloud of suppressant. The flames sputtered and died. It worked. The fire's out. Emma coughed hard, the extinguisher's chemicals mixing with the existing smoke. Excellent job, Emma. You're so brave. Marcus glanced at his supervisor. Janet had just finished a call, her expression grim. She scribbled on a notepad and held it up. GETTING help. Pilot en route. She pointed at the clock. 7 minutes. 7 minutes. They had 7 minutes to figure out how to save this child's life. Emma, I need you to do something very important now, Marcus said. I need you to look for a button or switch that says autopilot or has the letters AP. It might be on the panel in front of you. Emma's vision blurred with tears and smoke, but she scanned the instrument panel. There, a section labeled autopilot with several buttons and switches. I see it. There's a whole section that says autopilot. Marcus's heart hammered. This was the critical moment. If the autopilot could re-engage, it would stop the descent, buy them precious time. But he'd never talked anyone through this remotely, let alone a child. One wrong button press could make everything worse. Emma, I need you to trust me. Do you trust me? Through the static and alarms and her own terrified sobs, Emma's small voice came back. Yes. Good. Now look at that autopilot section. Do you see a button or switch that says ENG or engage? Emma's finger traced across the panel. There's a button that says APENG. Perfect. Emma, when I count to 3, I need you to press that button. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Press it now. Emma's finger stabbed the button. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a mechanical whir filled the cockpit. The control yoke began moving on its own, pulling back against Captain Chen's weight. The nose of the aircraft slowly, impossibly, began to rise. The synthetic voice announced, autopilot engaged. The descent stopped. The altitude held steady at 11,400 feet. Emma stared at the instruments in disbelief. It stopped going down. Marcus exhaled the breath he'd been holding. You did it, Emma. You just saved your own life. But both of them knew this was only the beginning. The hard part, the landing, still lay ahead. Sarah Matthews was 3 miles into her morning run when her phone exploded with calls. She ignored the first 2. Sunday mornings were sacred, her only time to clear her head before the chaos of the week began. But the third call showed FAA emergency on the screen. Her legs stopped moving. Matthews here, she answered, breathing hard. Sarah, this is Bill Chen at Seattle Center. The voice was tight with urgency. We have a situation. Citation jet, pilot incapacitated, suspected fatal, 8-year-old child on board alone. Aircraft is on autopilot at 11,000 feet with fire damage to instruments. We need someone who knows citations. We need you. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What's the ETA to SeaTac? Under current heading and speed, maybe 90 minutes. But Sarah, the child, has to land it. There's nobody else. For 3 seconds, Sarah Matthews stood frozen on the jogging path while her mind processed the impossible. She'd flown citations for 15 years, had instructed hundreds of pilots, and spent 20 years in the Air Force before that. But teach an 8-year-old to land a jet over the radio. No training prepared anyone for that. I'm 12 minutes out, she said, already running. Don't let her touch anything until I get there. She sprinted toward her apartment at a pace that would have impressed her drill sergeant 30 years ago. Behind her, other joggers stared at the woman racing away like demons pursued her. They had no idea she was running toward a nightmare. At Seattle Center, Marcus kept his voice steady in Emma's ears. "Emma, honey, I need you to just sit tight for a few minutes. We're getting someone who's an expert on your exact type of airplane. Her name is Sarah, and she's going to help you." "Okay." Emma's voice was small, exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the crisis was ebbing, leaving her shaky and frightened. Captain Chen remained motionless beside her, his face now a disturbing shade of gray. Emma tried not to look at him. "Can you tell me what you see outside your window?" Marcus asked, keeping her engaged, keeping her focused on anything but the corpse in the cockpit. Emma turned her face to the windscreen. "Mountains, lots of mountains and forests, some clouds below us." "That's great, Emma. You're doing so great." Marcus glanced at the radar. The Citation was holding altitude and heading, the autopilot doing exactly what it was designed to do. But autopilots didn't land planes, not in Citations of this vintage. Someone would have to take manual control for the approach and landing. That someone was 8 years old. Janet Rodriguez appeared with a laptop, setting it beside Marcus. On screen was a Citation cockpit diagram, every button and switch labeled. Behind them, the control room had transformed into a crisis center. Controllers handled all other traffic, clearing airspace, rerouting flights. Phone lines burned with emergency calls. News was already leaking. A local scanner enthusiast had heard the transmissions and posted to social media. The story was spreading like wildfire. 9 minutes later, Sarah Matthews burst through the security door, her running clothes soaked with sweat, hair plastered to her forehead. She'd covered the distance in 8 minutes flat. Someone thrust a headset at her. She grabbed it, gulping water from a bottle someone else provided, and dropped into the seat beside Marcus. "Status," she demanded, her eyes scanning the radar display. Marcus briefed her in 30 seconds, everything he knew about Emma, the pilot's collapse, the fire, the autopilot engagement. Sarah's face remained impassive, but her hands clenched white-knuckled on the desk. "Emma," Sarah said into the microphone, her voice warm despite her hammering heart. "My name is Sarah Matthews. Can you hear me okay?" "Yes," the small voice came back tentative, uncertain. "Emma, I want you to know something. I've been flying planes just like yours for a very long time. I know every single button and switch in that cockpit, and I promise you, I'm going to help you get home safely. Do you believe me?" A pause, then, "I think so." "That's good enough for now. Emma, can you tell me about yourself? What grade are you in?" The question surprised Emma. 3rd grade, at Riverside Elementary. 3rd grade, that's a great age. What's your favorite subject? Science, I guess, and reading." Sarah smiled, though Emma couldn't see it. "Science is perfect, because flying is all science. It's physics and math and problem solving. And you've already solved some really big problems today, haven't you? You put out a fire and got the autopilot working. That's incredible." Emma felt a tiny spark of pride through her fear. "Captain Chen taught me where the autopilot button was." Sarah's throat tightened. David Chen, she'd met him at a pilot convention years ago. Good man, good pilot. He taught you well, and now we're going to use what he taught you. But first, I need to know exactly what we're working with. Can you describe what you see on the instrument panel? Tell me about any damage from the fire." Emma looked at the foam-covered controls. "There's white stuff everywhere from the fire extinguisher. Some of the screens are dark. There's a crack in one screen. Some buttons are melted." Sarah's jaw clenched. Damaged instruments. This was getting worse by the second. "Okay, what about the main flight displays, the big screens in front of the pilot's seat? Are those working?" "The one in the middle is dark. The ones on the left and right are still glowing." "Good, those are critical. Emma, I need you to read me some numbers. On the right screen, you should see numbers that say Alt and SPD and HDG. Can you find those?" Emma squinted through the smoke residue. "Alt says 11,400, SPD says 198, HDG says 275. Sarah scribbled notes. Altitude holding steady. Airspeed slightly high but manageable. Heading 275 roughly west. She pulled up a map calculating. The citation was over the Cascade Range, about 70 miles from SeaTac. You're doing perfect, Emma. Now here's what's going to happen. That autopilot is going to keep flying the plane for a while longer, keeping you safe. But eventually, we're going to need to bring you to an airport so you can land. Do you understand? I have to land the plane. Emma's voice climbed an octave. But I don't know how. I've never flown before. I know, sweetheart, I know it's scary. But here's the thing, you don't have to know how because I know how. And I'm going to tell you exactly what to do step by step. You just have to listen to my voice and do what I say. Can you do that? Emma's breath came in short gasps. Through the windscreen, the world looked peaceful. Blue sky, white clouds, distant mountains. It seemed impossible that she was in mortal danger. What if I mess up? What if I crash? Sarah chose her next words carefully. Emma, I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be hard. Maybe the hardest thing you've ever done. But I've taught a lot of people to land airplanes, and you know what? You're already braver than most of them. You put out a fire. You saved yourself when the plane was falling. You can do this. But what if? No what ifs, Sarah interrupted gently. Right now, we're just going to take this one step at a time. You don't have to think about landing yet. Right now, all you have to do is sit there and talk to me. That's it. Can you do that? A shuddering breath. Okay. Okay, Sarah echoed. She looked at Marcus, then at the assembled controllers and emergency personnel who'd gathered around. Every face showed the same expression, hope warring with dread. Outside the tower windows, emergency vehicles were already positioning around the runway. Fire trucks, ambulances, crash equipment. News helicopters hovered at a safe distance. The FAA had issued a ground stop for SeaTac. Every flight was being held or diverted. The entire airport was shutting down for one tiny aircraft with one terrified child aboard. Sarah pulled the cockpit diagram closer and began studying every detail. Somewhere in this impossible situation, there had to be a path to survival. She had to find it. Emma Harrison's life depended on it. The call went out at 10:23 a.m. Military asset request, fighter escort for citation November 7-3 Papa Charlie. At McCord Air Force Base, 30 miles south of Seattle, Major Rick Dawson was reviewing flight reports when the scramble order came through. 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons were wheels up within 6 minutes, screaming into the October sky at speeds that made civilian aircraft look motionless. Viper 11 flight, you're cleared direct to intercept citation at your 12 o'clock, 40 miles, altitude 11,000 feet, the controller's voice crackled. Be advised, aircraft has a single juvenile occupant, pilot deceased, aircraft damaged. Your mission is visual reconnaissance and support. Dawson's hand tightened on the stick. In 18 years of military flying, he'd escorted damaged bombers, intercepted hostile aircraft, and flown combat missions over 3 continents. But this, a child alone in a crippled jet, this was new territory. Viper 11 copies all, proceeding to intercept. The F-16s closed the distance in minutes. Dawson throttled back, pulling alongside the small white Citation. Through his canopy, he could see into the civilian jet's cockpit. His breath caught. A tiny figure sat in what looked like a jump seat behind the pilot's position. Blonde hair, small hands gripping the armrests. Even from this distance, he could see she was crying. The pilot slumped motionless against the controls, clearly deceased. Smoke stains marked the windscreen and instrument panel. Seattle Center, Viper 11 has visual contact. Citation appears stable, autopilot engaged. Visible fire damage to cockpit. I can see the child she's. His voice cracked slightly. She's very small. In the control tower, Sarah pressed her transmit button. Emma, honey, I need you to look out your left window. Do you see anything?" Emma turned her tear-stained face to the side window and gasped. A massive gray fighter jet flew parallel to her, so close she could see the pilot in his helmet and oxygen mask. He raised one gloved hand in a slow, deliberate wave. "There's a fighter plane right next to us." Emma's voice carried a note of wonder through the fear. "That's Major Dawson," Sarah explained. "He's a very experienced pilot and he's going to fly right beside you. You're not alone up there, Emma. We're all with you." Dawson keyed his radio to the frequency Emma could hear. "Hey there, Emma. I'm Major Dawson, United States Air Force. You're doing an amazing job up there. I'm going to be your wingman all the way home. That means I'm right here beside you every single mile. You've got yourself a fighter escort that's pretty special." "Really?" Emma's voice was tiny, hopeful. "Really? In fact, my daughter would be so jealous right now. She's 9, and she thinks fighter jets are the coolest thing ever. Wait until I tell her I flew escort for the bravest pilot I've ever seen." Despite everything, Emma felt a small smile tug at her lips. "I'm not a pilot." "You are today," Dawson said firmly, "and you're doing great." On the ground, the emergency response had reached unprecedented levels. SeaTac International Airport was in complete shutdown mode. Every arriving flight had been diverted to Portland, Spokane, or Vancouver. Departing flights were held at their gates. The airspace for 50 miles had been cleared of all traffic except the Citation and its F-16 escorts. Runway 16R, the longest at SeaTac, at 11,901 feet, had been foamed. Fire trucks lined both sides, crews at the ready, ambulances waited. Crash equipment stood by. News helicopters circled at the edge of the restricted airspace, their cameras capturing everything for a world watching in real time. Inside the terminal, travelers pressed against windows, phones out, recording. Social media exploded with posts, prayers, and speculation. Save Emma was trending worldwide within 20 minutes. In living rooms across America, families gathered around televisions as news anchors provided breathless updates on the unfolding drama. In Montana, Emma's parents boarded an emergency charter flight, both sobbing. Her mother couldn't stop repeating, "She's just a baby. She's just my baby." In Seattle, Grandma Rose sat in her living room, rosary beads clutched in arthritic hands, whispering prayers older than memory. Sarah Matthews checked her watch. They'd been at this for 47 minutes. Emma was holding steady, but the child had to be exhausted, terrified, running on pure adrenaline, and the hardest part was still to come. "Emma, I need to explain what's going to happen next," Sarah said, her tone shifting to teacher mode. "Right now, the autopilot is keeping you flying straight and level. But to land, we're going to have to turn that autopilot off, and you're going to have to fly the plane yourself. Do you understand?" The silence stretched for several seconds. Then, "But I can't reach the pedals. Captain Chen showed me, pilots use pedals on the floor to steer." Sarah had been dreading this. She'd studied the Citation cockpit layout obsessively for the past half hour. The rudder pedals, essential for directional control during landing, required leg strength and reach that an 8-year-old simply didn't have. "You're right," Sarah said carefully. "You won't be able to use the pedals, but here's what you can do. You can use the control wheel in front of you. It's like a steering wheel in a car, except it also controls going up and down. Turning it left and right will turn the plane. Pulling it back makes you go up. Pushing it forward makes you go down. Have you seen Captain Chen use it?" "Yes, lots of times." "Good. Emma, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Landing without rudder pedals is going to be very difficult. But it's not impossible. The control wheel alone can get you on the runway. You just have to make very small, gentle movements. Can you see the wheel from where you're sitting?" Emma looked at the yoke extending from the instrument panel. Captain Chen's lifeless hand still rested on it. She shuddered. "Yes." "I need you to do something hard now, Emma. I need you to reach forward and put your hands on the wheel just below the pilot's hands. Can you do that for me?" Emma's whole body recoiled. Touch the controls. Touch near Captain Chen's dead hands. I don't want to. I know, sweetheart, I know it's scary. But I need you to feel the wheel to understand how it moves. You don't have to do anything with it yet. Just touch it. With trembling hands, Emma reached forward. Her small fingers wrapped around the yoke below Chen's cold, stiff hands. The wheel was solid, real, and absolutely terrifying. The weight of what was being asked of her crashed down like a physical force. I can't do this, Emma whispered. I'm just a kid. I can't land an airplane. People go to school for years to learn this. I'm in 3rd grade. I still need help with long division. I can't. Emma, stop. Sarah's voice was firm but kind. Listen to me very carefully. You're right. Under normal circumstances, what I'm asking you to do would be impossible. But these aren't normal circumstances. And you're not a normal 8-year-old. A normal 8-year-old would have panicked and frozen. You fought a fire. You worked the radio. You engaged the autopilot. You've already done impossible things. Major Dawson's voice joined in from his F-16. Emma, I can see you through my canopy right now. And you know what I see? I see a fighter pilot. Because that's what we do. We face impossible situations and we figure out how to survive. You've already got the right stuff. Emma's grip on the yoke tightened. Outside her window, the F-16 flew steady and sure, a guardian angel made of metal and fire. Below, somewhere in that vast expanse of forest and mountain was the ground, the runway safety home. Between her and that runway lay the most terrifying 20 minutes of her life. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll try. Sarah exhaled slowly. That's my girl. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this one tiny step at a time. First, we're going to turn the plane toward the airport. Then we're going to descend very slowly. Then we're going to line up with the runway. And then, only then we're going to land. But right now we're just going to turn, that's all. Just one small turn. Ready? Emma wiped her eyes with one hand, keeping the other on the yoke. Through the windscreen, the sky stretched endlessly blue, peaceful, deceptive. Ready, she said. The training began. Emma, look at the heading indicator. Sarah's voice was steady as steel. It's the dial that looks like a compass with numbers around it. What number is at the top? Emma squinted at the instrument. 275. Perfect. We need to change that to 160. That will point you toward the airport. To do that, we're going to turn off the autopilot and you're going to turn the wheel to the right just a tiny bit. Maybe an inch. Are you ready? Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms were slick with sweat on the yoke. What if I turn it too much? Then you turn it back, Sarah said simply. Emma, the airplane wants to fly. It's designed to be stable. Small corrections are all you need. I'm going to count to 3 and you're going to press the autopilot disengage button, the same one you pressed before, but this time you'll press it to turn it off. Then very gently turn the wheel to the right about 1 inch. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Emma's finger stabbed the button. The mechanical voice announced, autopilot disconnect. Immediately, the plane felt different. Alive. Emma could feel it through the yoke, every tiny movement of air against the wings, every slight variation in thrust. It was like the difference between watching someone else ride a bicycle and suddenly being on it yourself, feeling every wobble. Turn right, Emma. Gentle, Sarah coached. Emma rotated the wheel a fraction. The plane's nose swung right, faster than she expected. The horizon tilted. It's turning too fast. Roll it back left, small movement. Emma overcorrected. The plane rolled back left, the nose swinging past center. Outside, Major Dawson watched the Citation's wings rock back and forth as the child struggled for control. His jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed to do something, but he was powerless. He could only watch. Smaller movements, Emma. Imagine you're holding a baby bird. You don't want to squeeze it, right? Same with the controls, light touch. Emma's breathing came in rapid gasps. She made a tiny adjustment right, another slight correction left. Slowly, painfully, the oscillations dampened. The wings leveled. The heading indicator crept around 200. 190, 180, 170. Stop the turn now, Emma. Level the wings. Emma brought the wheel back to center. The plane steadied on heading 160. She'd done it. She'd actually turned the plane. That was amazing. Sarah's voice rang with genuine excitement. Emma, you just flew an airplane. Do you understand how incredible that is? Despite her terror, Emma felt a flush of pride. I did it. You absolutely did. Now we're going to do something even more important. We're going to descend. The airport is at sea level and you're at 11,000 feet. We need to come down slowly and carefully. See the throttle levers. Those are the handles between the seats that control the engines. They should have black knobs on the end. Emma located them. I see them. Pull them both back about 2 inches. Slowly. That will reduce power and the plane will start to descend. Emma wrapped her small hands around both throttles. They were stiff, requiring more force than she expected. She pulled. The engine noise changed pitch, dropping to a lower whine. The nose dipped slightly. Altitude is decreasing, Emma reported, watching the numbers wind down. 10,900, 10,800. Perfect. You're descending at about 500 feet per minute. That's exactly what we want. Sarah consulted her calculations. At this rate, 20 minutes to sea level. The airport was 35 miles away. The math worked barely. But then the wind hit. The Citation bucked violently as it descended into rougher air. Emma shrieked as the plane dropped, her stomach lurching into her throat. The yoke jerked in her hands. The right wing dipped sharply. What's happening? Emma screamed. Turbulence, just bumpy air. Sarah kept her voice calm, though her own pulse spiked. Level the wings, Emma. Keep the wings level with the horizon line. Emma fought the controls, her small arms straining. The plane bounced and shuddered. Papers and debris from the fire extinguisher floated through the cabin. Captain Chen's body shifted against the harness, his head lolling. Emma tried not to look. I can't hold it. Her arms ached. The yoke felt like it was fighting her, a living thing trying to escape her grip. Major Dawson keyed his radio. Emma, this is Major Dawson. I'm in turbulence too. My plane is bouncing just like yours. This is normal. You're doing everything right. Just hold on and keep those wings level. From his F-16, Dawson watched the small Citation get tossed by the invisible river of disturbed air flowing over the Cascade Mountains. The jet wallowed and pitched, but the child was maintaining control. Barely. Her corrections were crude, over-controlled, but she was keeping it upright. The turbulence lasted 90 seconds. To Emma, it felt like an hour. When the air finally smoothed, she was crying again, her arms trembling from exertion. You made it through, Sarah said softly. Emma, you just flew through mountain turbulence. Do you know how many student pilots freeze up in turbulence? But you didn't. You fought for it. I was so scared, Emma sobbed. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Brave means doing it anyway, and that's exactly what you did. On the ground, the emergency response entered its final phase. Medical teams received detailed briefings. Crash equipment moved into position. The foam on runway 16R glistened white in the late morning sun. News networks interrupted regular programming. In offices and homes across the world, work stopped. Everyone was watching. Sarah checked the radar. Emma, I need you to look straight ahead through the windscreen. Do you see a city in the distance? Emma peered through the smoke-stained glass. Far ahead between patches of cloud, she could make out buildings, streets, a sprawling urban landscape. I see it. That's Seattle. That's where we're going. You're 15 miles away. In about 12 minutes, you're going to be on the ground, safe, home. 12 minutes. Emma tried to comprehend it. 12 minutes between her and either salvation or catastrophe. 12 minutes that would determine whether she lived or died. Emma, I need to prepare you for what comes next, Sarah continued. Landing is going to be the hardest part. The runway is going to look very small at first, then it's going to look like it's coming up very fast. The plane is going to want to drift left and right because you don't have rudder control. You're going to have to make constant small corrections with the wheel, and when you touch down, it might be rough. The plane might bounce, but that's okay. Even experienced pilots bounce sometimes. What if I miss the runway? Emma's voice was small. Sarah paused. There was no gentle way to answer. Then you'll try again. We'll go around and make another approach. But Emma, you're not going to miss. I won't let that happen. I'm going to guide you down inch by inch. You just have to trust me and do exactly what I say. Can you do that? Emma looked at the city growing larger ahead. Somewhere down there were her parents, rushing toward the airport, her grandmother praying, strangers who'd stopped their lives to watch her fight for survival, people who believed in her. And here, in this smoke-damaged cockpit with a dead man beside her, she was the only person who could save herself. "Yes," Emma whispered, "I can do that." "Then let's bring you home." The Citation descended through 8,000 feet, its small form silhouetted against the clouds, a fighter jet on each wing, heading toward a destiny that would be written in the next 11 minutes. At 5,000 feet, the world transformed. What had been abstract numbers on instruments became terrifyingly real. Emma could see individual buildings now, cars on highways, boats on Puget Sound. The airport sprawled ahead, a massive complex of runways, terminals, and taxiways that looked impossibly complicated. "Emma, do you see the runway? It's the long gray strip straight ahead," Sarah's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Emma spotted it, a thin line of concrete stretching across the landscape, looking impossibly narrow, impossibly small. "I see it, but it's so far away." "It's closer than it looks. You're 3 miles out. I need you to reduce power more. Pull both throttles back another inch." Emma complied. The engine noise dropped to barely a whisper. The descent rate increased, 4,500 feet, 4,200, 3,900. "You're coming down too fast," Sarah's voice sharpened. "Push the throttles forward just a little, half an inch." Emma's hands shook as she adjusted the throttles. The descent slowed but didn't stop. The altimeter continued unwinding. 3,400, 3,100. Major Dawson pulled his F-16 into a climbing turn, giving Emma space. From above, he watched her approach vector. His trained eye saw immediately what the controllers on the ground couldn't. She was high and fast, her descent angle too steep. The Citation was diving toward the runway like a dart. "Seattle Center, Viper 11. Advise the Citation is well above glide slope, descent rate approximately 1,000 feet per minute. She's going to overshoot if she maintains this profile." In the tower, Sarah's face went pale. Too steep. Emma was coming in too steep. If she continued this descent rate, she'd slam into the runway at devastating speed. "Emma, I need you to pull back gently on the yoke. We need to flatten your descent. Pull back about 2 inches. Emma pulled. The nose rose, the descent slowed, but now her airspeed was dropping too quickly. The plane began to shudder, the beginning of a stall. "Stall warning, stall warning." The synthetic voice filled the cockpit. "What's that?" Emma's voice pitched into terror. "What's stall warning?" "It means you're going too slow. Push forward on the yoke and add power. Do it now." Emma shoved the yoke forward and jammed the throttles. The nose dropped. The shuddering stopped. But now she was diving again, the runway rushing up faster than before. 2,100 feet, 1,800, 1,500. "Too much, pull back, gentle," Sarah was shouting now, her professional calm cracking. Emma was sobbing, yanking the controls back and forth, the plane porpoising through the sky in waves of climbs and descents. Nothing she did felt right. The ground was coming up so fast. Buildings rushed past on either side. She could see people on the airport roof, cars in parking lots, everything in terrifying detail. "I can't do this," Emma screamed. "It's too fast, everything's too fast." Yes, you can. Sarah's voice cut through like a whip. Emma Harrison, you listen to me right now. Small movements, stop fighting the plane, gentle pressure. 1,000 feet. The runway filled the entire windscreen. Emma could see the white center line, the numbers painted on the concrete, 16R. Emergency vehicles lined both sides, tiny figures watching her approach. Reduce power, Emma. Pull throttles to idle. Sarah's voice had found calm again, forced and brittle but present. Emma yanked the throttles back, too hard. The engine spooled down to near silence. The plane dropped like a stone. You're sinking too fast. Add a touch of power. Emma's mind was fracturing. Too fast, too slow, too high, too low, nothing made sense. Her hands moved on the controls with no conscious thought, pure instinct and terror driving her actions. The plane wallowed through the air, wings rocking, nose bobbing. 500 feet, 400. Level the wings, Emma, you're drifting left. The runway was no longer straight ahead. Emma had let the plane drift. She cranked the wheel right. The Citation banked sharply. The right wing dropped toward the ground. Not that much, level the wings. 300 feet, 200. Emma could see the faces of firefighters now, could see the foam on the runway. The ground was right there, rushing up at impossible speed. She pulled back on the yoke with all her strength. The nose rose, too much. The tail dropped. The Citation hung in the air for a moment, nearly stalling again, then dropped. 100 feet. Keep it steady, Emma, you're almost there. 50 feet. The runway stretched beneath her, solid and real. Emma's vision tunneled. All she could see was concrete and white lines and the ground coming up and up and up. 30 feet. Flare now, pull back gently. 20 feet. Emma pulled. The Citation's nose lifted. For one perfect moment she was gliding, floating just above the runway. 10 feet. Then gravity reclaimed its prize. The main landing gear hit the concrete with a sound like a gunshot. The impact was brutal, violent, slamming Emma against her restraints. The plane bounced, not a gentle skip but a massive leap that sent the Citation 20 feet back into the air. "Oh God!" Emma screamed. The plane was completely out of control now, airborne again but with no speed, no lift, nothing but momentum and gravity. It rotated slightly left, the wings no longer level. The right wing dipped toward the ground. Sarah's voice was in her ear but Emma couldn't hear the words. Everything was noise and terror, and the ground coming up for a second time. The wheels hit again, harder than before. The right landing gear took the impact first, compressing violently. The plane slammed down on the left gear a fraction of a second later. Metal shrieked. Something in the landing gear assembly cracked with a sound like breaking bones. The Citation veered hard left, skidding sideways off the center line. Smoke poured from the tortured tires. The right wing dipped lower, its tip now only feet from the concrete. Emma was screaming, hands frozen on the yoke, her small body helpless against the forces trying to tear the plane apart. Fire trucks gave chase, foam spraying. Emergency crews watched in horror as the small jet careened toward the grass beside the runway. 3,000 feet of runway remained. The plane was doing 60 miles per hour, still decelerating but drifting further left with each passing second. Emma couldn't hear Sarah's voice anymore over her own screams and the shriek of metal and rubber. The edge of the runway was 10 feet away. Then 5. The grass appeared in Emma's peripheral vision, soft and green, and exactly where the runway wasn't supposed to be. The Citation's left wheels touched the pavement edge, then skipped across onto the grass. The right wheels followed a heartbeat later. But something miraculous happened. The grass, soft and yielding compared to concrete, acted like a cushion. The plane's violent skid slowed. The nose began to straighten. The wings gradually leveled as the Citation plowed through the manicured turf, throwing up chunks of earth and grass in its wake. "Stay with IT, Emma," Sarah's voice broke through the chaos. "Keep the WINGS level." Emma's hands, frozen on the yoke, made tiny unconscious corrections. The plane shuddered and bucked, but it was slowing. The nightmare deceleration that had seemed unstoppable just seconds before was working with her now instead of against her. 60 miles per hour became 40, 40 became 20, 20 became 10. The Citation N-73PC came to rest 4,200 feet down runway 16R, 15 feet into the grass, nose pointed at a 20-degree angle from the centerline, its right wing drooping from damaged landing gear, smoke rising from overheated brakes and torn tires. But it had stopped. Emma sat frozen, hands still gripping the yoke, eyes wide and unseeing. Her chest heaved with rapid, shallow breaths. She couldn't move, couldn't think, could only exist in the sudden, shocking silence. Then the silence shattered. Fire trucks converged from both sides, foam spraying even though there was no fire. Paramedics sprinted across the grass. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft within seconds. A firefighter reached the cabin door, wrenching it open with practiced efficiency. "I've got her, I've got the child," he shouted into his radio. Emma turned her head slowly, as if moving through water. A man in heavy firefighting gear stood in the doorway, his face kind behind his protective visor. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said gently. "My name's Mike, you're safe now. Can you unbuckle your seatbelt?" Emma's hands wouldn't work. They'd been clenched on the controls for so long they'd forgotten how to do anything else. Mike climbed into the cabin and carefully released her restraints. He lifted her out of the seat. She weighed nothing, this tiny child who'd just done the impossible. As he carried her toward the door, Emma's eyes fell on Captain Chen, still slumped in the pilot's seat, still gray, still gone. "Captain Chen," she whispered, "we have to help him." Mike's throat tightened. "Other people are going to take care of him, honey. Right now, we need to take care of you." He carried her out into the sunlight. The moment her feet touched the ground, Emma's legs gave out. Mike caught her, lowering her gently to a sitting position on the grass. Paramedics swarmed, checking her vitals, looking for injuries, speaking in calm, professional tones. But Emma heard none of it. She stared at the Citation, at the scorched cockpit, at the emergency crews working around Captain Chen's body, and the reality of what had just happened crashed over her like a wave. She'd survived. She was alive. And she began to cry deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place beyond fear, beyond trauma, beyond anything an 8-year-old should ever have to feel. A paramedic wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Another offered water, but what Emma needed wasn't medical care, and it arrived 30 seconds later. "Emma," her mother's scream cut through everything. "Emma." Dr. Sarah Harrison broke through the security perimeter, her husband right behind her. They'd been rushed from a charter jet straight to the runway, still in their travel clothes, faces streaked with tears. Sarah fell to her knees on the grass, pulling Emma into her arms with a force that threatened to break them both. my baby, oh God, my baby," she sobbed, rocking Emma back and forth. Emma's father wrapped his arms around them both, his shoulders shaking. For long minutes they simply held each other, a family reunited against impossible odds. In the control tower, Sarah Matthews collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Marcus Webb stood beside her, his own eyes wet. Around them, controllers and emergency personnel erupted in cheers and tears. They'd witnessed a miracle. Major Dawson, watching from his F-16 as it circled the field, keyed his radio. "Seattle Tower, Viper 1-1. Request permission to do a victory roll." The controller's voice came back thick with emotion. "Viper 1-1, permission granted. She earned it." The F-16 rolled inverted over the airport, a salute to the bravest pilot Dawson had ever seen. News coverage went global within minutes. Networks showed the footage on loop, the citation's terrifying approach, the bounced landing, the skid onto the grass, the final stop. Social media exploded. Miracle Girl, Emma the hero. Messages of celebration and disbelief poured in from every corner of the world. But Emma knew nothing of her instant fame. She sat on the grass, wrapped in her parents' arms and a paramedic's blanket, slowly returning to herself. Her grandmother arrived 20 minutes later, tears streaming down her weathered face, adding her embrace to the family circle. 3 days later, after medical evaluations and debriefings and more news interviews than she could count, Emma met Sarah Matthews in person. The pilot who'd saved her life walked into the hospital room where Emma was being held for observation, and the two stared at each other for a long moment. Then Sarah knelt beside the bed and took Emma's small hand in both of hers. "You saved yourself," Sarah said softly. "I just talked you through it. The courage, that was all you." Emma shook her head, tears forming again. "We did it together. You and Marcus and Major Dawson and everyone, all of us." Sarah smiled through her own tears. "Yeah, all of us." The FAA investigation ruled it the most extraordinary emergency landing in aviation history. Captain David Chen was posthumously honored for his years of service and for teaching Emma just enough to give her a chance. His funeral was attended by hundreds, including one small blonde girl who placed a single flower on his casket and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me to fly." Emma received commendations from the President, the FAA, and the Air Force. She appeared on national television, met celebrities, and inspired countless children to dream bigger. But what she remembered most was simpler: the voice in her headset that never wavered, the fighter pilot who stayed on her wing, the firefighter who carried her to safety, and the moment she felt her mother's arms around her again. The citation was eventually repaired and flew again. Emma never did. But sometimes, on clear October mornings, she'd look up at passing jets and remember the day she touched the sky. The day an 8-year-old girl became a pilot, a survivor, and a miracle. The day she learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's flying anyway. The end.